Senator McPhedran, thank you very much for your speech. First of all, a second reading vote is, of course, not just a vote to send a matter to committee for study. It is a vote on the principle of the bill, which could actually become law if it goes through the process and passes. So the first question I have for you is, in your speech, I believe you were quoting from the UK, where you were part of that quote, you said, if you can join the military or join the army, you should be able to vote. But in Canada, you actually can't join the military at age 16. You have to be at least age 17, and I believe it's with parental consent, 17, 18 without parental consent. So does that affect your quote?
Not entirely, because at 16 and younger, you can join reserves and you can join cadets. You can become part of what is the military process in this country.
Senator Batters.
Thank you. Okay, here are a number of other things you can't do at age 16 in Canada, just a few that I was writing down as I was sitting here listening to you. You cannot drive without conditions in many provinces, certainly in my province of Saskatchewan. You cannot buy cannabis. You cannot buy alcohol. You cannot sign a legal contract. In fact, Connor Bedard, Regina Pat's superstar and the NHL #1 draft pick that year, he wasn't 18 yet when he was set to sign his first NHL contract, so his dad had to sign his contract actually for him. Even the age to marry. Some provinces only allow age 16 to marry with major limitations like parental or court consent. So given all of those limitations, isn't it proper that we should be waiting till age 18 rather than...
Senator McPhedran, yes. You asked for 3 more minutes and the time is expired.
Yes.
So, are you asking for more time, Senator?
I would love more time.
Is it agreed? 5 minutes?
Thank you so much. Senator Batters, thank you for the question. I think I did make the point earlier that we have a wide range of different ages for different functions, but one of the most important indicators of the capacity to vote is capacity for cold cognition. And a number of the examples you gave were kind of a mixture of what requires hot cognition, cold cognition. And I think that what we focus on, certainly in the work that I'm doing with the campaign across this country, is capacity. And the research, the scientific research, lines up very solidly behind the capacity of 16 and 17-year-olds to think through and be able to form a decision in order to vote.
Senator Batters.
More. Well, then, with that issue of capacity, then wouldn't the age to enter into a contract be the most comparable then to voting? Because that would directly goes to capacity, and the age for that is the age of majority, which is 18 in some provinces, 19 in some provinces, but certainly not 16.
Senator McPhedran.
I think it's an interesting comparison, but it's not a determinant. We're talking about extending voting rights. We're talking about revitalizing our democracy. And the research around the ability to vote and to vote responsibly is very strongly in favor of the capacity of 16 and 17-year-olds. The fact that there may exist a law elsewhere in our country that deals differently with age. We have many laws with many different age limits for many different reasons. Should not be a reason for us to look specifically at the right to vote, the capacity to vote, and the relevant evidence connected to that capacity.
Senator Martin.
I'll just ask one question to start. I know that you have been so passionate about working with youth, and I applaud you for that. I don't agree that the Senate is the best place for a bill that will have very significant implications and consequences, and we're the farthest removed from the classroom where the students are captive by adults who will be their teachers. I was a former teacher, as you know. So I'm wondering if you would agree that a good place to start before this bill, because you mentioned bringing youth to be witnesses, but you didn't talk about teachers, you didn't talk about unions, about all these stakeholders. Would you agree that the Senate would be a great place for a study that will inform us before we enter into a bill that will have huge ramifications?
Senator McPhedran.
Thank you for the question. There are a couple of points and areas that I want to respond to. One is your point about influence in the classroom. And in April of this year, we had 880,000 students in this country, high school students, who voted in the election, the April election, within their high school system run by Elections Canada. And that voting was distributed widely, and you might be pleased to know that they actually elected a conservative minority government. So the point about influence of teachers is actually not borne out by what is clearly research and practice, including this year. To your other point about a study, yes, and that is exactly what I'm suggesting. But I'm also suggesting the substance of looking at changing the law. That is the essence of every bill that we look at in this House. And if we were the first country to be looking at this, I might be persuaded by your argument that we should back up a little bit, but we're not. And the research that's available is so strongly in favor of the benefits to democracies to do this. And so to hesitate on this and not to follow the regular procedure that we do when there is a bill proposed and take the time to study it, trust our colleagues at a committee to come back and report to senators I'm proposing.
Senator McPhedran? Yes, your time now has expired, but Senator Patterson wanted to ask a question. Do you want more time for that question?
If I'm allowed more time, I would be grateful.
Is it agreed for one question?
Agreed.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to continue talking about some of the points that have been raised. And we're talking a lot about the cognitive ability of the voter, and I think you have a very compelling case there. But voting is one of the greatest privileges of a democracy. And one of those principles of democracy is what you're voting on, you're accountable for. And you certainly have made compelling cases when it comes to things that are within provincial jurisdiction, municipal. You've talked compellingly about people who are not voting, engaging in the democratic process, and I'm really with you. But I'm going to go back. One quick clarifier on military age. Canada is a signatory of the United Nations, I think it's the Security Council resolution on child soldiers. So 18 is the age in Canada as it is internationally. And even if a person can join the reserves at 16 with parental consent, and I will say my son signed at 16, yes, but there are severe restrictions. They cannot go to war. And so when I talk about the obligations and responsibilities that come with voting, I think it's essential that we have anything that we do with this. It's great to talk about my rights. The cognition is perfect, but what are your accountability to especially things that fall within the federal domain? I do not believe that a 17-year-old should be incarcerated for murder. However, if you vote at a federal level for a party, a group, or a politician, you are contributing to decisions being made on a platform. I agree that the cognition is there, but I think in order to fully study this bill, I would ask you would we also be looking at, especially the most, I'm going to say the most extreme things, the obligations and responsibilities of the democratic right to vote, that we have to look elsewhere to see whether we need to also change some of our ages of restriction for minors, as we call them. Would that be included as part of your study?
Senator McPhedran.
Well, that's the beauty of Senate committees. They have the authority to decide what is relevant to study, and I would very much trust in their wisdom in that. On your point, though, about responsibility and accountability, I think what we want to strive for is a consistency. So not to impose standards on 16 and 17-year-olds that we don't impose on anybody else who's already voting. And that was part of my point earlier about we all know people that we probably think should not be voting, but they have a right. And the other beauty of the potential here is that this has constitutional implications, but it doesn't require a constitutional amendment. We're talking about roughly 2 million new voters, if this were to, potential new voters, if this were to come to be. But the proposal here is to actually delve into exactly the kinds of questions that are being raised here today and have the benefit of having this House informed by the rigorous process that our committees go through.
Sénatrice Clément.